Have either of you two ever come across someone in person or online with the exact same name as you?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen other
Yeah.
people with my name, but I've never met them.
Yeah.
Nor interacted with them in any online capacity. You didn't just like message someone and be like, "Hi, Megan."
What?
Yeah.
No. Why would I message someone just because they have the same name as me?
Yeah. The other David Riedels out there have a habit of using my email address as their own because they're stupid, apparently. And so every quarter I get an email from some fucking Chevy dealership in Rochester, New York, or some Buffalo, some fucking place. And they're like, "Hey, it's time for your oil change." And I'm like, "Hey, it's time for you to change my email because the David Riedel you sold the car to is a fucking idiot." Because I've emailed this guy about it and told him, "Are you giving them the wrong email address?" And he'd be like, "No, my middle," and he's like, "No, my middle initial is in mine. They got it wrong." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. You can't get it corrected. Okay." And then there's another one in India. There's another David Riedel somewhere in Indiana. I got emails about horses, and I'm like, "Oh my God, there's another David Riedel out there, and he's a horse person. I'm married to a horse person. This is insane."
Worlds collide.
Yeah, and then there's a guy who does still life of fruit, an artist named David Riedel, and I'm sure one of these assholes pronounces his name Rydell. So
your favorite.
Yeah,
I gotta say it's probably either the painter or the horse guy. But I could see someone reaching out to you thinking it's the horse guy, being like, "Are you the David Riedel who does horses?" And you would say, "Nay, I am not."
Nay.
Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living.
My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Dave Riedel, and I'm unemployable, but I am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
No,
Sorry
you are.
for laughing at
yes,
that.
you are.
Well, lots of us are unemployable during COVID. See, I can't even talk,
True.
so that's just a great reason to not hire me.
Let's bring things up a little bit. We're
starting off on a downer.
Yeah, we're starting off on a downer here. Let's try and bring things back up.
Hey, there's a pandemic. It's going to be a downer.
Oh, I know. I'm just teasing. Anyway, on this week's show, we've got 4 movies we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about Over the Moon. We are going to be talking about Scare Me, Come Play, and the main feature tonight will be The Craft Legacy.
Which we should mention, we talked about The Craft on last week's exclusive audio for patrons.
Yes,
so
we did.
If you felt like becoming a patron just to hear that before you hear this, please go throw us a bone or two and join our Patreon.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/spoilerpiece.
Yes. And then you can listen to us talk about The Craft and then The Craft Legacy, and you get the full Craft experience.
Yeah.
It's craftacular.
It's crafty.
So we should probably start talking about one of the movies for this week. And I think we are planning to talk about Over the Moon, which is an animated film that's available on Netflix. And does either of you want to do a plot summary?
Kid in contemporary China has a dead mother, and her father is about to get remarried 4 years later. So she and her mother used to talk about how the moon goddess, was really cool, and she lost her love. And so the kid decides to build her own rocket ship and go to the moon and ask the moon goddess, I guess, to bring her mother back or her family. I'm never quite clear.
That's not why. No.
Keep her family together?
No, none of that. Did we watch the same movie? No, it was to prove that Chang'e, the moon goddess, was real because the mother said that she was real. The father, who's lovely, voiced by John Cho, doesn't think she's real. Her family doesn't think she's real. She overhears her family talking about, I can't believe she still thinks she's real. And she's like, I'm going to prove she's real. And yeah, because she feels like if she proves that she's real, then something about undying love and her father's undying love for her mother will
prevent him from being happy with this other woman that he's waited 4 years to find. Thanks, kid. You're an asshole.
Although I will say, what is going on with these films where people are getting engaged and not telling their children? That's fucking weird.
Yes.
That is weird.
That's fucking weird, and it annoys the hell out of me because I'm like, I'm sorry, you're a shitty parent if you're not introducing your partner to your child first before you're getting engaged.
Yeah.
Yes.
You should definitely keep the child out of it until you know it's a serious relationship.
Totally.
But otherwise, involve your children.
Yes.
I mean, that just seems kind of on point.
And talk to them and make sure that they understand that you're dating and that they're okay with it, and don't spring it on them and then have the other person's child tell you that your dad is getting engaged / married. Because that means she was talking to her son, but her dad just didn't even bother to include her.
Right. Which seems weird because it seems like they have a good relationship. So that's why it seemed so bizarre to me.
Yes. Seems, very important word in that sentence you just uttered.
Yes.
I should also mention that John Cho, woefully underused.
Yes.
Doesn't sing at all. Fucking whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah, I know. So this is a musical.
Also, Sandra Oh doesn't sing, and she's a voice in this too, and she has a lovely voice too.
Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Not everybody can sing in every fucking music. Does Ken Jeong sing in this? I mean, for Christ's sake.
He does.
He?
Weirdly.
Yes.
Oh, he does. He's got that right.
Yes.
You're right. He does. He's the most of all the sidekick characters in all of the animated movies I've seen in my life. He is top 3, one of the most annoying.
I was going to say most forgettable. He has literally nothing original or interesting about. So for me, I'm just gonna cut right to the bone on this one. I was not over the moon for this movie because
you're not over the moon for Over the Moon.
No, I stole that line from Shauna, so I'll give her credit. But it's derivative AF, just from top to bottom. It's so much like, in some ways, Abominable, which is made by the same people. It's like the same core story of you have a kid with one dead parent desperately trying to reconnect and hold on to anything that they possibly can to that dead parent. So they go off on this adventure with someone they don't like, who they end up liking by the end of the adventure. And it's a lot of the same story beats, but also it just feels like other animated movies. It feels like, aesthetically, we were saying, before we got on the mic, very much like Coco, Wreck-It Ralph, Inside Out.
Whoa. I don't think it feels like any of those movies. I just think the color palette. I think the color palette looks like those movies. I don't think it feels aesthetically like any of them.
Well, yeah, I disagree about that. I think it did for me feel that way.
No, and I also just want to point out that it's not the same people who did Abominable. It's DreamWorks, so it's the same studio, but it's completely different.
I'm pretty sure it's the same writer.
No, it's not. No, the director is different. It's Glenn Keane. This is his directorial debut. It was Jill Coulter that did Abominable. The screenplay is by Audrey Wells and Alice Wu, along with Jennifer Yee McDevitt. Yeah, so it is different. I'm not saying like the animators could certainly have been the same, but the main crew is different.
Audrey Wells, usually a better writer than this.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alice Wu is too. Yeah. I mean, although I liked this, I did. I liked the beginning. I liked the opening until she gets to the moon, until Fei-Fei gets to the moon, and then I liked the last 15, 20 minutes. I think the opening and close are really beautiful and heartfelt explorations of grief and loss, and how children and adults move beyond grief and how you let go. And I think that's such a powerful theme. And it is a recurring theme over and over and over, obviously in Coco, obviously in Inside Out. How do you move on? How do you let go of things? But I think it's a really salient and important theme to tackle because it is hard, for children to deal with. So I love that. I just think the middle is kind of a slog, unfortunately.
I also found when they got to the moon, after Philippa Soo does that kind of showstopper.
Oh, so
which
good.
I am not a fan of musicals, but I did dig that. I'm like, if only because, man, does she fucking have some pipes?
Yes. She's great.
But also, I actually, you guys might think I'm a little weird. I found the moonscape kind of hard to navigate visually because there's so much color and so much just like popping and things are jumping out from over here and over there, and it doesn't quite function on the same rules as like Earth. So it has like, you can walk through this thing and you'll be there, and I just remember thinking, Coco takes place in the land of the dead, and that's new to all of us, but I had no trouble navigating that shit.
That's true. That's true.
So I just kind of felt like there was, muddle seems like the wrong word to use for a movie that's so colorful, but it was really kind of a slog for me in parts. I was just like, I don't understand physically where we are, So
yeah.
I also lost part like when Bungie the rabbit, who is adorable and so cute.
So cute.
I was like,
Just
where did
cutest.
Bungie go? And like there was literally like a good chunk of time that I'm like, where the hell is Bungie? And I feel like I was supposed to know, but I didn't know. And yeah.
Well, we found out Bungie was falling around Jade Rabbit.
Oh my God.
Because, apparently they had to get together.
I did not need an anthropomorphic bunny love story. I'm sorry. I did not.
No.
Yeah. There are two things I'm thinking of that bother me. One is that, Bungie stays behind on the moon. And no one's asking her when she gets back where her rabbit is. This is not even a consideration. That felt completely strange to me. I can't imagine abandoning any pet, even if I thought that they could possibly be slightly happier. That would just be too hard for me. But the other thing is, getting back to your point, Megan, about the message here being, or one of the lessons that we're supposed to learn from the film in terms of like letting go and moving on. For me, I feel like that lesson didn't connect in a way. It felt kind of like a little bit of toxic positivity that like, just get over it. It'll be fine. You just have to change your mind to be fine with all of this. And I think it's kind of sad because it feels like, this girl has all this stuff sprung on her, and then she's just kind of forced to accept it rather quickly, because by the end, Chin is calling her his sister, and then it's just like, okay, now her dad's married, and it's I guess like a year
later. Yeah.
I don't know. That part bothered me. This like, oh, just get over it, kid. And I didn't feel like there was enough space for her character to like really process what was going on.
So I agree. So it's funny. I agree and have a different view. I agree with you that there wasn't enough space, and I would have loved, which is weird because the film is long enough. There should have been enough space for her to.
Man, is it long?
But I don't. It's funny. If that was the message I took away about how, just get over it. Yeah, I would agree. That's a really toxic message. That's horrible. That's awful. No one should just be like, get over it. Grief takes time, and everybody moves at their own pace through grief. I didn't think of it that way, though. I thought of it more as the person you love is always with you. That love is not going anywhere, but you can't stay, I guess stagnant, for lack of a better word. But I totally understand if it didn't work for you and why it didn't work. For me, it did. Like that part of the message did work. But I agree with you that there were so many other things that bothered me, as far as things being sprung on her and kind of taking away her agency, as far as her not having any say about, or not even being informed about her father's new marriage. So in those ways, those things really upset me and bothered me. But as far as the, not forgetting someone, but moving through grief, I thought that was done. That part of it, just that facet of it, I thought was done really well. Like I liked the column of solitude, or the solitude,
like the room of impenetrable sadness, or whatever it was called.
That's it. Yes. And I loved like kind of how it was like they were free floating, and I love how Chang'e goes to her and is like, you can't stay here and you'll turn into me. And I don't know, there was something really beautiful about that. It could have also been because there were parts of it that reminded me, not nearly as heartbreaking or as well done, but it reminded me a lot of the tale of the Princess Kaguya, which is also a moon goddess, also deals with loss. But anyway, that facet of it I thought worked well. But I do agree with you, Evan, that there were a lot of things that did not work thematically, as far as things being sprung on Fei-Fei, which is incredibly unfair.
Yeah. So I don't know. I wanted to like this movie. visually it's a feast. It really is gorgeous to look at. And I just found myself struggling to connect with it. It felt very derivative. The music to me didn't even do it for me. I feel like none of the songs to me advanced the plot. So I'm like, why am I sitting here listening to a song that looks pretty to look at, but isn't interesting to listen to?
I was just going to say, I loved the Philippa Sue song when she like welcomes, or kind of her welcome showstopper, as Dave called it. But you're right, it doesn't advance the plot. The one song I do think that really advances the plot is Fei Fei's I Want song, basically about, where she's singing about building the rocket ship to go to the moon.
Yes, that was the one time.
So they're so classic, and I love them. And that one I think was a good one.
I felt like most of the songs told us what we just saw.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, all right, thank you for explaining in song what we just witnessed on screen. Great. Now this movie is 5 minutes longer. So
yeah, I definitely think that a lot of the middle could have been edited out. Or to your point, Evan, it would have been nice to have Fei Fei explore, some of her, grief more, some of her, frustrations with what her father's doing or not telling her about.
Right.
Like that.
Sit with it more.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be inside out level sitting with it, but you could sit with it a little more.
Yeah, it is funny though, because I watched this with my roommate, and my roommate is a huge diehard Inside Out fan, which I mean, it's amazing and it's brilliant. But yeah, but I was like, I said that to him. I was like, oh, there's no Bing Bong levels of emotion here. He's like, no, don't even mention Bing Bong.
Yeah, you can't. You just can't bring up Bing Bong. I'm already getting choked up.
Boy, I don't remember that well enough. Thank God.
Don't think about it.
All right, maybe we should move on.
Okay.
So I think we said we were going to talk about the movie Come Play.
Right.
Indeed. Hey, a movie about another dead parent, sort of.
Well, that's a spoiler.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we are a spoiler piece, but yeah, it's a little soon to get to the spoiler. I mean, we did. I think when we saw Force Awakens, we just opened with, well, Han Solo dies. So I just.
Yeah. Han Solo is no more. Okay. Well, I'll just read the IMDb version of this. A monster named Larry that manifests itself through smartphones and mobile devices. That's what it says.
Stop it. Does it really?
It does.
I mean, I don't know why. And so what he does is he tries to befriend the person on the other side of the phone and then takes them over to the world of kills them and takes them over to the world of the dead, I guess.
Sure.
That would be my takeaway from it. And apparently this was a short film 3 years ago, which I didn't know.
Yep. Yeah,
I'll bet it was a better short film.
Yeah, Jacob Chase's short film, and then he adapted it and wrote it and directed this. Yes.
Yeah.
So
I mean, please.
I was just going to say, so I have a feeling I probably liked this a little bit more than you guys. But I want to talk about some of the things that I think really worked well visually. But I could not help but be reminded of another film that deals with
Babadook.
That deals with a children's storybook that haunts a family, a harried mother and a child that is extremely sensitive and doesn't have friends.
Yep.
And yes, that would be Jennifer Kent. Brilliant, The Babadook. And so I feel like I like that this film is exploring loneliness. I like that it's also exploring loneliness through technology and how technology can kind of get separated. I think that's kind of genius in a way. But it just made me keep wanting to watch The Babadook, which is such a better, more nuanced, complex, in-depth film. But I do like this, and I think that there were a lot of visuals that worked.
Yeah, yes. I think a lot of this worked. A lot of it worked, but the stuff that didn't work really didn't work.
Yes.
I think that's what the problem was. Is like for me, like Larry was scary. Larry was scary.
Yes.
Like the whole idea that there's a monster named Larry is like. I just kind of like the fact that his name is Larry because he's like, oh, it's Larry. He lives down the street. He's like Jim's stepdad. Oh, right, Larry. He's cool. He lets us use his basketball court. You know? Whereas this guy is just like, hey, come play with me and I'll kill you.
Right. He's like Salad Fingers meets Slender Man meets I don't even know.
Yes, he's very tall and bony and white, and he's scary looking like a motherfucker. He really is creepy looking. The
Yes.
creature
Yes.
design in this I thought was really good.
Jim Henson Workshop.
Yeah. And also, I appreciated that the way he tries to get to know the kid, other than through or entice him, I guess you would say, other than through his smartphone, is when he brings him the sponge, because the kid loves SpongeBob.
Yes.
I was wow, that is a super creepy touch.
Mhm.
Yes. There's a lot of SpongeBob in here, and I'm curious how much they had to pay to use this much SpongeBob.
Good question. Yeah, good question. 'Cause,
Maybe the parent companies are the same. Who knows?
possibly. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I liked SpongeBob playing on the phone when he's walking in the store. I loved one of my favorites is when Gillian Jacobs is changing the channels, trying to stop Larry, and he keeps like every time she changes the channel, it's another word that's like spelling out what Larry is saying about how he's going to take, Oliver, the little boy. Yeah, I thought that was great.
Right.
I also love, speaking of Larry's creepiness, and a really effective use of creepy visuals is when John Gallagher Jr., the father, is in the toll booth, and you see him in the foreground, and in the background you see the flyers that are whipping around, and they catch on the figure of Larry. Oh my God, that was genius. That was so good. So good.
Agreed.
Definitely creepy.
Both scenes in the toll booth I thought were really effective in terms of creepiness. Like when the dad was stuck under the counter hiding in there. That was fucking creepy as hell.
When Oliver's levitating because Larry's holding him. Oh my God. Yeah, that was really creepy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but some of the things that didn't work, since we're talking about that, is mom and dad have this scene where they talk about how Larry's trying to enter their world through the screens, and it's like, okay, hold on. I know audiences might need to play catch up sometimes, but I don't think there's any mystery as to what's going on here. Okay? Do we have to fucking like put it on the nose like that? Seriously, cut this scene. Just this happens all the time in horror movies. It's like, once you explain to me what's going on, I'm not really scared anymore. So
yeah, and I agree with you. I think they show enough the inside of the screen, or Larry inside the screen looking out. So I don't think that's
I kind of felt like when they were beating the screens with a hammer, that was accidentally going to let Larry out, because it's like, ooh, he's trapped in the phone, but it didn't. I thought that would have been cool.
I liked when they're all the little screens and Larry was coming out of them. Different body parts were coming out of them.
Yeah,
this movie is creepy.
It is.
Yeah.
We have to talk about my favorite scene that I literally, shit you not only did I busted out laughing, not because it's funny per se, but just because it actually surprised me. It was when all the boys who had been bullying Oliver are then over for the sleepover, and the kid gets pinned against a wall with a table.
Yeah.
Yes. That was
Larry
great.
grabs him.
Great.
Yeah.
It was so creepy, and it was so great. It really was. Yeah, there's a lot of tension here, and I really like the use of, I think this film is very patient, and it utilizes silence really well, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, but it does have problems.
I think significant problems.
Yeah.
I mean,
one, spelling out, what's going on. I think that if you just had, like we're talking about the TV scene when Gillian Jacobs keeps flipping the channels and you hear the words from the story, that's all the explanation you really need. Also, what was I going to say? I just, the whole like divorcing parents, and like I don't even understand why they needed to be splitting up. Frankly, it's just like the outcome would have been the same whether he was living in the house or not, because Larry can get him anywhere, right? So, which is also kind of interesting. If Larry can grab you and pick you up, why do you have to take his hand? Why can't he just take you with him? But, okay. Fine.
Right. Yeah.
That's a good question. Thinking about why the couple are getting divorced, I do wonder if the reason was to show how, and this is kind of awful, but I wonder if the reason was to show how difficult it is to have a child who's autistic, which is
maybe
kind of horrible.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something I've been wanting to talk about, is the ever presence of Oliver, the main character's autism. And I think to some degree
very specific autism.
Yes. And I think to some degree it can be effective when it's involved in the horror scenes, But other scenes, it's very contradictory, and in I would say in the film's like most climactic moment, pretty icky. There's this whole thing about how Gillian Jacobs as a mother is frustrated that her autistic son won't look at her. And then the moment that he does look at her is treated like this triumph because she's taken Larry's hand and she's going to be sucked off into his world. And I just thought that was, I don't know, I just felt icky about that.
I thought it was cruel. I thought it was exceptionally cruel.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, the makeup or the computer effects or whatever that was when she dies, yuck.
Oh, with her like bulging eyeball.
Yeah.
Like the cracking porcelain of her face. Yeah. Very disturbing.
And just like the trauma, the ending didn't, the coda didn't square with the ending.
No.
It's like Oliver and his mother have finally gotten to this place where they see each other, for lack of a better term. And then she's killed because, that's what moms do, I guess, in horror movies. And then his reward or whatever is she gets to come visit him in the middle of the night as a ghost, sort of. And she gets to twirl him around and they get to dance. That doesn't seem like a very good trade-off to me.
No. And the same thing with the dad. He's, at the therapy being like, oh, now I get why my wife was so frazzled all the time. This being a dad and trying thing is tough.
Right? Like you didn't fucking get it before, asshole?
Well, and also like Oliver is 7 years old? I mean, these kids are like in first or second or third grade. My kid who is 5 is at least as tall as Oliver. Okay. So there's a big, kids look different at different ages, whatever, who knows how old they are. But based on how the other kids act, they're basically like, if you took the kids from A Christmas Story and put them in a horror movie in this time period, it's kind of the same kind of dialogue, the way they speak to each other. They're sort of worldly. And also, big plot thing that I didn't like is you find out that the douchey kid, whose name I can't remember, Byron, who gets picked up and like pinned against the wall by Larry.
Abel. It's so great.
Yeah. It's like, wait, they were friends and mom canceled their friendship. And that seemed very forced and stupid to me. That, I mean, I'm sure parents do that kind of thing all the time, but it seemed really convenient how out of nowhere, Byron's like, why did you stop being my friend? And it's like, wait a minute, you stopped being hit. It was clumsy. That's the best word I can use to describe it, And so now all of a sudden we're pals and we got to be a part of the like, we know Larry club. It's like, okay, great. But mom's still dead and dad's an asshole. So.
Right. And we're also saying.
Total asshole, but he's clueless.
He is clueless.
Yeah.
And I would argue that the movie at the end is saying, okay, well, Oliver has been through all this trauma, but hey, look, at least he's learning to talk now.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, it feels very autism speaks, the kind of underlying grossness around the autism in this movie.
Right. Yeah. And I was really bothered by the fact that, again, like Dave, you said it about horror movies because that's what mothers do. But yeah, the fact of the sacrificial mother is such a trope. And it just, and it felt frustrating to me. And again, maybe if there was some more complexity around it, more nuance, something, maybe I wouldn't be so annoyed that she sacrificed herself. It would feel like a logical next step.
Yeah.
And the fact that the final line is that she says, I'll always protect you. How are you going to protect him as a ghost?
Yeah.
Right.
Or as a Larry.
As a Larry, who knows?
As Larry's weird monster bride. What is she? I don't know.
She's Larry's friend now.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, why can't Larry just be like, oh, we both want to protect him? Well, cool. You can I'm sorry, my bad. I mean, there could have been that.
Yes.
I mean, it wouldn't have been as cool in air quotes, but like, I just cannot get over. It just seemed, it's not mean. They don't mean it to be mean spirited, but it was cruel. So there's that.
And
but
corny.
There was some, it's definitely corny too.
But that's like, I wonder, like, was Larry only looking for Oliver, or is this something he does like every 10 years, every 50 years? Like, is this a recurring?
Unclear.
Who knows? And you're right. It's something that doesn't necessarily need to be explained, but at the same time, that's why the ending feels for me so incomplete. And again, gonna go back to it. That's why the Babadook has the best fucking ending, because it's so good. Because the monster never goes away. You have to learn to live with it. But
Right.
anyway,
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, this is what I meant when I said earlier that the things that work really work and the things that don't really don't. I did appreciate seeing Gillian Jacobs play a very non-Gillian Jacobs part.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, I think she's great. I think John Gallagher Jr. is great. I always like seeing him. And I think Azzy Robertson as Oliver is really good too.
Yeah, he was good. Or is good because movies exist forever, whatever.
That they do.
So, yeah. Evan, did you have something else you wanted to say? I feel like I might have stepped on you.
No, I think we've covered our bases here. I think I'm ready to move on to Scare Me if you guys are.
Oh. I'll move on to Scare Me.
Sure.
All right. Scare Me. I'll read the plot summary this time. During a power outage, two strangers tell scary stories. The more Fred and Fanny commit to their tales, the more the stories come to life in their Catskills cabin. The horrors of reality manifest when Fred confronts his ultimate fear.
That's 2/3 correct. Yeah, the stories don't come to life in the Catskills cabin.
Yeah,
they do.
Visually, they sort of do. Audio-wise, they sort of do. But right, they're not
audio-wise for sure. They do
really coming to life. Like, yes, there's a werewolf hand. Yes, there are shadows of things. But yeah, they're not really coming.
I would say that the sound design in this movie is fucking top notch.
Oh, it's spectacular.
Agreed. So hard.
Yeah, that's a big part of the. This worked for me on the whole, although some things did not, as with most horror movies. I read a lot of reviews because I was just like, I wonder what people think of this, and a lot of people hated the two main characters, Fred and Fanny. And I don't know, I thought Fanny was kind of a delight. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, I did think that Josh Rubin, I haven't seen him in anything else that I can remember. His character is supposed to be a complete douche. He played that just great.
Yeah. So that's something I love about this. I love that this film ultimately in the last 20 minutes becomes actually scary and is all about toxic masculinity. When there are clues very early on that he is a fucking asshole. Very early on. And it gives such a good payoff in the finale.
Yeah, it does.
Yes.
So, to go more in depth from the IMDb fucking whatever that is.
Right.
So Fred is a wannabe writer he's like lost his apartment. He's been kicked out by his girlfriend, whatever. And he's using all the money he has left to rent this cabin in the Catskills to like write his magnum horror opus.
Yes.
And while he's running the next morning, he bumps into Fanny, who's played by Aya Cash. And she is a best-selling horror novelist. She's written this book called Venus, which you get the impression is like one of the best-selling horror novels of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And she's up there working. Yeah, she's working on her next book. There's a storm, power goes out. She knocks on the window and she's like, dude, let's hang out and tell each other scary stories until the power comes back on. And then that's basically what they do.
Yeah.
And then Chris Redd delivers a pizza to them and he's a lot of fun while he's there.
He is. I enjoyed seeing him.
I thought he injected you needed more than those two characters to carry the rest of that running time. This movie is definitely overlong for what it is, which is just two people in a house telling scary stories to each other. One, and this is another big, I like that the movie does this, that takes a chance. Like, Fred is clearly not a good writer.
Yes.
And the stories he is telling are not good. I don't know how much better Fanny's spur of the moment stories are. They are better than his.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a big risk to have those two actors try to carry off the stories of Fred's that are as lame as they are and pull it off mostly. Like that werewolf story that he tells is completely stupid. But
I actually thought all the stories were pretty stupid.
Yes.
That was my problem with this film. Like, I loved the look of it. And you know, like I said, I loved the lighting. I loved the sound design. It's amazing.
It looked good. Yeah.
I love the performances. I think this is an incredibly clever concept. And I loved that. And I loved how things were kind of coming to life, even though they weren't really coming to life. But yeah, I just wasn't really into the stories. I was kind of like, these are kind of boring. These are kind of not great. They're not really interesting. And I'm like, when is this going to get really good? But like I said, then it does. When it kicks in hard. And for me, that's what really makes this film so worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, that when Fred shows his true colors there at the end, Yeah, I was I was caught in this weird moment where it would be like, well, this would make perfect sense if it turned out that he was a complete fucking psycho because he's, toxic. It's a toxic masculinity thing, and he ends up killing her because he's jealous of her talent. But I did appreciate the fact that he's so incompetent that he can't even chase her correctly and literally kills himself trying to kill her.
Yes.
If he's in fact trying to kill her, which he says he's not, but who knows?
I mean, here's the thing. I think he is because they don't dwell on it for very, very long, but he stalked his girlfriend and sent her, myriad letters and calls.
That's right.
So
200 to 300 letters, right?
And he had a restraining order against him. So was
true. He did say that.
Yeah, I mean, so I knew all along. I'm like, this guy's a scumbag. He had a restraining order. He's a stalker. He's clearly emotionally, if not physically, abusive. So, right away, the film is telling you, pretty much up front, that he's an asshole. You are not supposed to side with him. And yeah, so that's why not only do I love that, Fanny, who's this accomplished, talented, writer, gets away, but also she constantly one-ups him. She's constantly criticizing his lack of talent. She's constantly telling him, this is what writers do. I'm making notes. I'm taking observations. You have to put in the work. And it's so true. And I just, I love the scene where she also says that, when he complains about her stealing his life because she's writing about him in her notebook. And she's like, I'm a woman writer in horror. You don't think that people steal from me all the time? And So anyway, it was great. But I love that the film tells us very early on, don't like this guy. He's a jerk. And yes. And then it comes to fruition. It's a good payoff.
Right. When he doesn't tip his driver, you're like, okay, this guy's a dick. And he wants to snooze instead of talking to her. And he steals her idea.
Yep. Tries to pawn it off as his own. Yes. Which obviously is what stealing is anyway.
Yeah. Well, I also appreciate though that this movie, there are a lot of movies that they're written by somebody, but there's a writer in the movie, but they don't seem to understand what writing is. Whereas this movie does understand what writing is. It's like, if you're a writer, you're thinking about ideas all the time. Sometimes you scribble them down. Sometimes you don't. I have notebooks filled with half-baked whatevers, and also things you hear people say, things your kid does, things your significant other does, something you saw when you were on the bus one day, all that shit. She's just Fanny is the walking embodiment of a creative person.
Yes.
And Fred's just a fucking dope.
He's a specter of a writer. He thinks that it's just going to hit him all at once and come to him. And he doesn't realize that, no, you actually have to put in the work. You actually have to do it. You can't just want it.
She does say that about putting in the work. She has a few lines that are really cutting. One of my favorites was, come on, John Wick, pass the Bechdel test.
Yes, it's so great.
But I also appreciated, even though she's telling him you're a shitty writer, she's not saying you're always going to be a shitty writer. Mm-hmm. She is saying hey, if you do the work, you might become passable, competent, something. Right. I don't think he's ever going to be, a star, assuming he hadn't impaled himself on a fire poker because he's a moron. But, No,
I think you're right. And I think that's why she's harder on him than the other guy. I can't remember his name.
Carlos, I think.
Yes, Carlos. Yes, I think that's why she's so much harder on him, though, because, and she's very, she praises Carlos's ideas because, he's not a writer, but he's coming up with these really interesting ideas. But, Fred is claiming he's a writer. He's claiming he's a director. He's claiming he's an actor, and so it's well, okay, you say you're all these things, show me. And and he just can't. Not really. Or not well.
I also, I did notice though that if we're talking about stealing things, the ending of this movie is very much like the ending of Death Trap. If you ever saw that with, I never saw the play, but the movie with Christopher Reeve and Michael Caine, where, well, the cab driver, the punchline of this whole thing is at the end of the movie after Fred has impaled himself on the fire poker. Mm-hmm. And Fanny refuses to give him the ending he wants, which is to smash his head in with a log. She just leaves him for dead, which I loved that. Mm-hmm. Right. The cab driver comes in to pick him up and doesn't I don't even know that you get the idea that she must have seen his body eventually because why wouldn't you see it? but she finds Fanny's notebook and she just takes all the stories and steals them and passes them off as her own and becomes like, I don't know if she's a bestseller, if it's just that one store she's got her books in, whatever. But that's the ending of Death Trap. It's like these two guys kill each other trying to write a play, and then somebody else steals it and puts it up as their own.
Oh,
So
it's funny. I more thought it was kind of an homage to The Shining, because not only does he do the Jack Nicholson impersonation, but Carlos's back of his jacket says the Overlook Mountain.
it does.
And so I was like, oh, we're doing some Shining here. And then he chases her, So anyway.
Oh, I have to break in real quick. I looked at Carlo, not Carlos.
Carlo, thank you.
Yeah. I also appreciate just that there's one actor's name in this movie whose last name is Sick. She's the woman who puts out she's the bookstore person at the very end. But I just noticed that. I was like, Sick. What an awesome last name.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was surprised that this movie got such mileage out of two people in a room telling each other stories. I think, although the stories themselves were not interesting, the performances were entertaining enough.
Yeah.
And the sound design, like you both said, it's really vivid, and it creates just such a full picture of the story that's being told. And I think there's that moment I've seen in screenshots of the two of them turning, Fred and Fanny turning and shushing the camera. And I just thought when that moment finally came up, it was actually really effective.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I agree. Yeah. A lot of things to like.
Yes.
Some things. Oh, I also loved it. There was a moment when Fred is, before everything goes down, when the power is still on at the beginning of the movie, he's trying to write and he's sitting at the table and he's either making the noise himself or he hears the noise. I don't remember. And he goes over and opens the basement door.
Oh my God.
Down the dark basement stairs and just goes, nope, and shuts the door.
I laughed out loud. I thought that was great.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah, he was
really
throwing his voice saying, "Let me out."
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that was really good. Yeah, so this is the directorial debut of Josh Rubin, and good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, entertaining.
Yeah, he definitely directed the shit out of it. I will say that.
The writing,
screenplay wise,
acting, the directing, all of it, really good.
Yeah. So that was fun-ish.
All right. So that brings us to The Craft Legacy.
Yay!
Yes, I'm excited to talk about this. Been excited to see it. And yeah, this was one that I watched and I was just really looking forward to hearing both of your thoughts about it.
Well, I'm sorry to say it's a piece of shit. I'm just kidding. I thought it was really good.
You sit in a throne of lies.
I know. I enjoyed it, although I do think there are some things it could have done better. Although I'm not sure. Well, first of all, okay, what do we? IMDb. A group of high school students form a coven of witches, a sequel to the 1996 film The Craft.
Yep.
And it is a sequel in a
sequel, but yeah.
Yeah.
But it is, yes.
Interesting. There are some things in this movie that go unexplored that I think needed exploring because they do bring them up. But then I thought, well, maybe there's going to be a sequel because it certainly feels like there's going to be.
Right. They do seem to kind of leave things there. But one thing I wanted to bring up very early on is when we talked about The Craft last week, one of the things we said is we felt like there could have been more. They could have done more. And I felt very similarly about this film. Like Dave, you were just saying there was stuff they could have explored. I would have been okay with this film being longer. I don't say that very often, but I think there could have been more story here and maybe some things could have been fleshed out to make this even stronger.
I agree. And I also think this movie fucking moves. This movie does not waste time. Whereas The Craft, and maybe it's because it was the 90s, very similar running time, but not nearly as much shit happens in that movie as happens in this. Like so many things happen in this movie, and immediately, like they get the coven, for lack of a better word, together immediately, like in 10 minutes.
Wait, why are we saying it's another word? They are a coven.
I can't remember if they said it. I was trying to remember whether they said it or not, which I don't remember.
Yeah.
And here's something that I thought, and I wonder what you guys think. The Craft, very clearly written by a dude.
Yes.
The Craft Legacy, very clearly written by a woman.
Yes.
Mhm.
You know,
Because Zoe Lister-Jones is awesome, and I love her, and I love that she wrote and directed this.
Yeah.
yeah, and I love that this movie was like tight.
It was.
This, you know,
This is great. I haven't shared what I thought, and this is a great film. I had so much fun with this.
I'll say very good, but not great. But that's just because
God, we're gonna quibble.
no, it's just it's like nitpicky stuff. It's like, you know, you introduce the whole, and we can get into this in a moment, the warlock aspect of things, which they allude to very early on, but then they kind of leave it alone for a good 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and then it comes up like a motherfucker. But I would really have loved to known more about that, just in terms of, it feels like that's something that they could explore in another movie. And I don't know if you want to get into warlocks and witches fighting each other and shit like that.
Oh,
I don't know.
We do, but I just have to, sorry, I have to jump in. You don't call male witches warlocks. They're witches too.
Okay. One of the characters said, is it too early for warlock jokes at the end of the movie? So,
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying,
So-
yeah, the film can say that, but that's not actually real. But yes,
Okay.
in the film universe, sure.
Okay. So anyway, so when David Duchovny shows up right in the beginning, did you guys feel creeped out by him immediately?
Yes.
Or did it take some time?
No, I was
I-
immediately. I predicted the entirety of this film pretty much.
Yeah.
He creeped me out immediately.
Mhm.
I was just like, oh my God, David Duchovny. And he's doing that smiley David Duchovny thing. So you know he's bad news. So
Yes. Super creepy. I also really liked this movie quite a bit, and I think my only real critique is that I wish there was more, which is
Yeah.
a weird thing to say, but mostly just because I feel like there were some plot threads that I would have liked more thoroughly developed. But it is tight. I agree with you both. It is tight, and it uses its runtime effectively. So, like, yeah, how
Yeah.
mad can I be?
well, right. I just kind of wanted to know, and maybe this is all set up for like the next movie. Maybe this is all planned out. Like, where the fuck did David Duchovny come from? His three sons, what's their role in this? Like, you got the sleepwalker doing his thing, which
Mhm.
scared the shit out of me
Yes,
when you see him in the mirror.
that scene scared the
Um,
shit out of me too.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. Because I thought it was like some manifestation or something. I didn't know it was just some guy standing in a corner. There were a lot of things that surprised me in a good way. And I also loved how the witches never turned on each other.
Yes.
Like in The Craft. I was just like,
Mhm.
they kind of had a misunderstanding or whatever you want to call it. But they all came back together to work with each other, which I thought was like, I was like, good choice,
Mhm.
you know?
Absolutely. Definitely a good correction from the first film.
Do we want to give away the big? I mean, it's been out for 2 days by the time this podcast runs. What's the big thing at the end?
Oh, that Nancy's her mother.
Yeah,
Lily's mother. Yeah.
I would love to know
Mhm.
how that happened too, by the way, considering she's been presumably at an institution. I'm sure she must have something happened, but like,
I think, yeah, I mean, I kind of thought it was pretty clear what happened because her mother, Lily's adopted mother, Helen, talks about how her real mother was dealing with trauma. And I was like, oh, it was a rape. And so I thought that was pretty strongly alluded to that she was raped.
see, I thought that too, but I also thought, well, maybe it was I mean, this is the trauma of being institutionalized for one thing. That's
Sure.
traumatic. And I don't know whether to believe David Duchovny's character when he says, you know, a witch has to give up her power of her
willingly,
own will.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
I guess that's true that Nancy did that. I mean, who knows whether that's actually whether he's telling the truth. I don't know.
That's true.
You know, so these are things like these are questions I want answered. I also kind of liked how when Lily at the end walks into Nancy's room, Nancy the thing she says is, "May I help you?" or something. She's like, "Can I help you?" or "May I help you?" And it's just like, this is not the Nancy I remember. I just kind of love the fact that Fairuza Balk is just in this movie for like 8 seconds. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, it was a good cameo.
But what else did you guys like about it? Please.
Oh my God, there's a lot. I loved the menstrual blood. Love menstrual blood in a film. And I love that the girls are immediately, the other three are immediately
Mhm.
supportive of Lily when she is
Yeah.
shamed and mocked in class for having her period and it bleeding through her jeans, and they bring her shorts. And what I loved about them was in the first craft, they really only want Robin Tunney's character in their group because Nev Campbell sees her doing kind of something magical with the pencil. So right from the start, it's kind of a advantageous usury kind of relationship. Whereas in this, they just want to help her because they feel badly for her and they empathize.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then it's not till later when they see her necklace and they see kind of a pagan symbol that they're like, oh, wait, you could be in our group, in our coven. So I really loved that too, that they were so supportive and so kind of loving and, sisterly right from the start and throughout the film. And I thought that was great. I love that we get that we have a character who is a trans girl, who's a trans Latina girl. Like, that's amazing. That's great. And she talks about how, when Frankie is talking about how, like, oh, women have superpowers because they can have babies, some Ridley Scott shit. And, Lou
right, Ridley
Lourdes
Scott.
is like, not all girls can do that. I can't, And so I love that there's that conversation because it is so common in women's circles that when, they talk about pregnancy or abortion and they talk about women doing it. And it's like, no, not everybody who can do that is a woman and not everybody, who is a woman can do that. So I loved that. Yeah. And I love that the themes throughout are consent and toxic masculinity and embracing your power and women's community. And I love that Zoe Lister-Jones really puts these themes, she threads them throughout, she puts them front and center. But it's done in a way that doesn't feel heavy-handed, at least not to me. And I love that it's just really integrated into the story. And I love that so much.
Yeah, there's one thing in this that I found kind of troubling. I don't know. So you've got the Tom Brady lookalike who is the douchebag at the beginning.
Timmy, the
Timmy.
jock.
Timmy
Yeah.
the jock, who the four young women cast a spell on him to just make him nicer.
To make
Or
him
to-
woke.
Woke, that's it. And he becomes woke and then some.
Oh, yes.
And then they're playing Two Truths and a Lie or whatever that game is called.
Mhm.
And he talks about how he hooked up with one of David Duchovny's sons and that he's bi.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, wow, cool. And then we've got a bi character in this movie. Man,
Yep.
this movie is like all about inclusivity. But then 15 minutes later, he's murdered off screen. And I was like, okay, so we're going to murder the bi kid? That just made me
Yeah.
feel gross
Yeah,
a little bit.
ditto.
It was tough. I did love that scene was included. I liked that they were also supportive of him coming
Mhm.
out and sharing that with them. And yeah, I dug that. I felt like it did fit in with David Duchovny's character. I wanted to understand more about him in terms of being this like weird motivational speaker and like his whatever weird shit he seems to be teaching men. I mean, I know it's grounded in like the most ultra toxic masculinity, like when he's explaining why he killed Timmy and he says something like, you were making him in your image and I had to restore balance because, we are your rulers and your kings and this and that.
Mhm.
Like, I'm
Right.
like, damn, that is some like old school toxic masculinity that he is just brandishing about.
Well, what's so interesting about that is that Zoe Lister-Jones did a fuck ton of research on MRAs in order to incorporate that into David Duchovny's character. And she said it was really horrible doing that research.
Ugh.
I bet. Good
Yeah.
Lord. I mean, but
Yeah,
the thing
kudos
that,
to her.
yeah, I would have liked to know more about, I mean, who wants to know more about toxic masculinity? But what I did think was interesting is like the one time you see it, it's in this very strange sort of, I don't even know what you would call it. It's not it's not like a self-help group or something like that. It's
Right.
like they're there
Grief circle.
kind of grief circle. They're chanting about like dead Timmy and and all the while you're thinking, and you pretty much know, like you've figured out by this point that David Duchovny did him in. I would love to know why, other than, I mean, did he know that he hooked up with one of his kids, or is it just because of the girls, or it is everything?
Mm.
And also the kind of whole muddled idea of, and I think this is about his character, not about the writing, is that he's talking about, oh yeah, well, pagan symbols, he's like, this is our family crest and pagan symbols are cool because snakes are blah, blah. As you're created in our image, we're not created in yours. And that's like some biblical shit. So like, where are you coming from, David Duchovny? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, well, and all
the Bible stole a lot from, biblical shit stole from pagan.
Too. Yeah,
so that could have been why it's muddled.
And then all his kids have biblical names too. He's got
they do
Isaiah,
Isaiah, Jacob, Abe.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's like I noticed that immediately. Joan's like, huh, those names. I was like, yeah, those are all Bible names. What the fuck?
Adam is his name.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Oh, that's right. His name's Adam. I forgot.
Yep.
I appreciate then Zoe Lister-Jones not naming one of the women Eve, because that would have been too much.
Well, Lily is Lilith.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Aha. I didn't even think about that.
I always think about Lilith.
And also, kudos to Michelle Monaghan for playing that scene where it's actually David Duchovny pretending to be her.
Yeah, that was
playing
great.
that like wide, bug-eyed, like just like going for it. Like, woo, man, you are bringing it in this scene. And then, and then when she's like, your power is dangerous or whatever, and I was like, aha. And so then I also would have liked to have known, not that he's like, well, your mom's tied up, and then someone else is tied up, and one's more tied up than the other, and it's like, all right, well, we're being coy here. What actually happened? Is she in a basement? What'd you do with her? And then there's no explanation for how they got her out. Just like, hey, she's here driving a car. So, 15, 20 more minutes, I would have been right on board with this movie being 2 hours and 5 minutes long.
I would have taken it. I would have liked more on the friends too, the other members of the coven. Just a little more. I wouldn't have needed that much more, but just maybe a tiny little bit.
Like a scene each. They each get an extra scene, So
I do like that what we do see when there's the montage of the girls using their powers. I like that Tabby uses her fire fingers to cross off or singe off that some girls called a slut. And I love Lourdes is defending, kind of in a way, another, coded queer character. So I do like that we get those brief moments, but yeah, I agree. I would have liked to have seen more too. I think this is a good runtime, but also I too would have been happy if it was a little longer.
Yeah.
Yes. And I loved, speaking of the powers, some of them were just so cool to look at. I loved when they stopped time. I thought that was
cool.
Such a cool addition, power, what have you, especially when they were able to stop time on David Duchovny. That was just,
It was great.
Yeah. It was a little bit unclear how the three of them, having unbound themselves. But I mean, maybe it just didn't work. Who knows?
Or maybe they just went and took off the string.
Yeah, I don't know how the spell works, so it works. It's off screen, whatever.
Can I just say my biggest disappointment of the movie was that the shape-shifting power did not appear and Frankie did not shapeshift into Kristen Stewart like she promised.
That would have been an amazing cameo.
That would have been great.
The best cameo.
Yeah.
That would have been, Oh, Kristen Stewart, where are you?
That would have been cool. I would have gone to see a movie in the theater just to see that again. Yeah.
I also wanted to talk about something because Dave, you so greatly brought up the fact that this clearly is written by a woman, and I love that on Zoe Lister-Jones's first film, Band-Aid, she had an entire all-women crew. And on this one, she was not able to do that because of last-minute filming, I believe in Toronto. But she did have mostly a woman crew, like especially all the department heads were women. And I just think that that's so great because so often, top of the line, below the line, there's not enough women in film, positions. And so I think that that's great that she's making a concerted effort to do something about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just, Evan, go ahead.
I was just going to add that both Megan and I can attest that she's also just a lovely person to speak to.
Yes.
We interviewed her once.
I believe that.
Yeah. She's very cool.
Yeah, I just think it's kind of striking sometimes. I think what makes it so striking in this case is, you've got one movie. It's a movie and its sequel, So also, The Craft, the original one, is such a product of its time. And maybe this will be too. Maybe you watch The Craft Legacy in 20 years and you're like, that's clearly 2020. Mostly because it says, COVID-19 consultant in the closing credits. But it just, other than the fact that, there's like this toxic masculine asshole trying to kill them, I thought it was just, I just kind of like, the whole idea that you can be who you are and that's cool. You've got these 4 incredibly diverse young women and it's just like, yeah, all right. Like who, basically this is going on to, I like inclusivity is what I'm trying to say. I don't know. Thank you, young people, for being so much more enlightened than other people. There you go.
I think we all like inclusivity here, which is a good
yeah.
No, I mean the three of us. I just mean the three of us.
Yeah, but I guess you see it so rarely. This is just a very stark example in a good way.
Yes.
And a lot of times, especially now with younger filmmakers, although I don't think, Zoe Lister-Jones, what, in her mid-late 30s, something like that. But
so you were right.
Oh, okay.
My long way of saying.
It's it feels very what's the generation after millennial? Gen Z. It feels very like just kind of accepting in that sort of way. I just wish there was more of that shit. I wish there were fewer old white dudes making movies. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Definitely. I want to talk about, and I'm so glad you talked about that, Dave, because that's so important. I want to talk about the performances before we end the show. I think that Kaylee Spaney, who plays Lily, and Lovie Simone, who plays Tabby in particular, who is also great in Sella and the Spades. I think the two of them are so great. I mean, the 4 girls have a great camaraderie and chemistry together, but the two of them especially really stand out and I think are really great.
Yeah. I just like the fact that somebody's name is Lovie Simone. That's just cool.
It's a great
But
name.
she was great. This is, and kind of piggybacking on what Evan said, wanting to know more about each of the girls is, I definitely wanted to know more about Tabby and Lou, especially.
Yes.
But all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some very fine, assured performances for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I like that. They all worked.
And I know that's, long awaited sequels or, sequels that often happen far after the fact don't tend to be good. But I was just so happy that this one was good.
Yes, I was so worried it was going to be bad.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like you needed to wait this long because, you got to have time for the kid to grow up, right? So.
Right. I wasn't too worried with Zoe Lister-Jones at the helm. I thought that she would do well, but I always get a little worried because Evan, as a person, I enjoy seeing movies, long-awaited sequels. I get personally excited for that kind of stuff, and I've just in the past have been let down so many times.
Yes.
That I'm always so psyched when something just totally delivers on my expectations.
I was like you, Evan. I was not worried about Zoe Lister-Jones. What I was worried about was maybe like the editing or the studio getting involved and kind of meddling. But then I found out, I kind of found this out after the fact in this great interview with Zoe Lister-Jones at IndieWire, that she picked her DP and editor that she worked with before on, I think, Band-Aid. And so I think that, again, she clearly had her vision and she clearly had her crew that she wanted to work with, which I think her vision shows and her talent shines through. So I think that is good. So if I'd known that before going in, I would have been not quite so worried. But yes, but you're right. There is that pressure of long-awaited sequels. Will they hold up? I think this would be a great double feature with the original Craft, but I also think this would be a great double feature with Sofia Takal's Black Christmas, because that is also a very feminist, inclusive update to the original.
I still need to see that.
Because it's also about toxic masculinity and women embracing power and banding together. So thematic is very similar.
Is it a remake of Black Christmas, or is it kind of like a sequel with the same name?
It's a remake.
It's a remake. Okay. Noted. Because the first one's Bob Clark, right? So yes, it is. I'm thinking about that now. Margot Kidder. Yeah. Okay. Yes. That's the one I'm thinking of. It's Bob Clark, who of course directed A Christmas Story and Porky's. So,
there we go.
Yeah. And Super Babies. Don't forget that one. Baby Geniuses.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
All right, we've come a
Very-
long way from the Craft legacy.
Yeah. Maybe we should swing it back around. Sorry.
Let's reel it back in. I think the only other thing that I want to say, and just because we haven't touched upon it, is one of the reasons why I found the film so entertaining is I felt that it was really atmospheric. It did a really good job of creating an atmosphere that you just wanted to live in and stay in and just hang out in.
Well, except for that weird, creepy house that Lily lived in, but sure. but to your point of the, it was, I mean, that house just feels from the moment they walk into it,
Right.
And especially the way that book jumps out of her hands, like danger, Will Robinson.
Yeah.
You're not safe here, which she says. Yeah. The other thing I want to say about that house, or not the house per se, but just it reminded me of this, is that for a film that is all about consent and talking about consent, I did find it really weird and off-putting that Timmy does not ask for consent to kiss Lily. And I feel like if he was really that woke and it was really all about consent, he would have. But minor point. That maybe is minor.
Fair enough. I can
think
get
that's
on board
fair.
with that.
I think it's fair criticism.
Yeah, I don't want to be kissed unless someone asks me. Anyway.
For that matter, neither do I. So, there you go.
All righty then.
The lesson is don't assume people.
Right.
Ask for consent.
Yes, as they say, consent is sexy. So do it. Ask the questions. So, Over the Moon, you can see that on Netflix. How do we feel? Would we recommend? Yay or nay?
Nay.
I would say see it because I think the opening and closing are good. But go in with low expectations.
I think I'm also going to come down in the nay category. Come Play, which is, I guess, available in theaters?
Yeah, I think it's only in theaters right now.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. We do not advocate going to the theaters.
We do not.
No.
But would we say see the movie at some point when it's available in a safe place?
Tentative yes.
I would say yes, because even though there are things that don't work, I think there are some great visuals that definitely do work.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I'm on the same page there. I think there's some really effective, scary moments in there that are worth seeing and a cool idea at play.
Definitely cool idea.
All right, so Scare Me, which is available on Shudder. I would say C. I think
rock.
Yeah,
I would too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that brings us to The Craft Legacy, which is available in theaters and video on demand. And I think I'm going to guess that we would enthusiastically say see this movie.
For sure. For sure.
Definitely.
Good. I'm glad we all liked it too. I was worried that maybe like one of us wouldn't like it or something. I'm glad we're all on the same page too.
No, we were talking about how quickly it moves, and because I can't sit through a movie without going to the bathroom, I hit pause at one point. I'm like, oh, how far do I have to go? And there were only 17 minutes left. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize I'd been sitting for an hour and 15 minutes.
That's impressive.
Yeah. I was really surprised. And then I saw Vamp the next night and was like, I got to take a pee. And I've only been watching this 22 minutes. Okay.
Yikes.
Yep.
Well, alrighty then. I think we'll wrap things up here for this episode. I'm going to start by saying a huge thank you to our editor, Otto Clamor. Otto, thank you for editing the show each week and making us all sound good. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Otto.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find the show anywhere you get podcasts, but you can also find us at our website, which is spoilerpiece.com. You can find us all over social media. We are on Facebook at Spoiler Piece Theater. We are at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And if you want to get in touch with us, drop us a line, tell us we're wrong, tell us we're right, say hi, whatever. We're just happy to hear from you. You can email us, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can call us
at 862-21-PEACE.
That's the Spoiler Piece hotline. You can leave us a message and we'll hear it. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you that way as well. And if you really like the show, please rate and review us on whatever podcast platform you follow us on. But we're not going to be upset if you decide that you want to review us on Apple Podcasts. You can do that by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. That's a link that'll take you wherever you want to go in terms of being able to rate and review us. And if you really, really like the show, you should join our Patreon. This week in our exclusive audio for patrons, we talked about the 1986 horror comedy Vamp. Not so much on the comedy, more on the horror. You gotta listen to hear the rest.
Horrific. I mean, you know.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah.
But not wrong.
So, no. So anyway, check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/spoilerpiece. You can sign up for a couple bucks a month. You get exclusive audio. You get to vote in polls. This week's audio was the winner of our October poll. And you can also tell us movies you want us to see and review, and we'll talk about them there. So we also want to say thank you to all of our patrons.
We do. We want to give a huge thank you to Bill Scahan, Bob Chipman, Chris Wilkinson, Davida Margolin, Deirdre Crimmins, Elisa, Christopher Jensen, Max Colville, Mike, Lord of the Sith, Rory Glynn, Sean Pensionar, Shauna Harris, Shelley M. McCaskill, Shona Glasgow, and Zach Pigeon. Thank you so much, patrons. We really, truly treasure you and appreciate you.
Yes, thank you, patrons.
Oh, thanks, patrons. And so my name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. And you can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld and on Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinion S.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write for movies sometimes for Salt Lake City Weekly. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
We'll see you next week, folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.